Welcome, everyone. You were listening to and perhaps watching this week's edition of Hot Sauce Interviews. I am Peeze. The reason I'm sitting by myself because we're still in quarantine. But joining me, of course, is our producer, as always, the Eagle at Master Control. Eagle is present on my interviews because I am useless without him. Terry does a great job of producing his own interviews, but unfortunately, I keep Eagle employed. Joining us this week is, it's a little bit different. Ben Cardilli, Montreal comedian, joins us. We like to talk to people. Sometimes it's fairly sports heavy, sometimes it's not. Just a little bit of our background. Ben, when we started putting together the show, we looked at our foundation wasn't necessarily typical sports radio, typical sports media. We wanted to emulate something more along the lines of Tosh.0 or This and Marrow or The Daily Show, where essentially we're taking media that exists on Twitter, on mainstream media sites, and then making fun of them. Because, we got the feeling that sports media was kind of serious and sort of weirdly self-serious for what it was. And we're a group of guys who would like to sort of hang out, have a couple of beers, and when you're watching a game in the background, sometimes you're talking about the game, sometimes you're talking about whatever else comes to mind. You know what I mean? So that was our foundations, and that's what we want to do. So definitely interested in talking to comedians. I personally am interested in sort of the craftsmanship and the art, and so I do take that opportunity. Ben, why don't you give us a little bit of backstory with regards to your background and what brought you to comedy?
Well, I was a musician for like 20 years, still am. Then I kind of had a couple cool opportunities. I worked for a record label. I went on that show, La Voix, the singing show for Quebec there. I ended up in the quarterfinals. And after that, I don't know, it's just like music it didn't have that scary factor to it anymore. So I wanted to take a break and do something I'd always been thinking of doing. I'd been writing jokes for a couple of years before that, whether or not they were funny or not. No, actually, definitively they were not. I quickly discovered that I had to up my material, but I got started doing comedy just for just as something to do on the side to kind of like keep it fresh, keep it different, and it ended up kind of taking over my entire schedule. It's highly addictive, and it became kind of my go-to thing for about 2 years now, and I've just been kind of buried in that. And then recently, over this quarantine, I finally took everyone's advice and started combining music and comedy, and I've basically over the quarantine recorded a full-length album of like funny songs that I've been putting out videos for periodically, and soon that full album's going to be coming out, and I'm pretty excited to get it out there,
So I do want to ask you about quarantine for sure, but before I do that, Ben, I wanted to actually let people know, where can they find your comedy stylings, and where will they be able to find this album, and what will the album be called?
So the album's called The Great Indoors, and it's all just about indoor struggles, right? As we're all experiencing them. It's not I wasn't trying to make it something that was going to only make sense to people while they're in quarantine. A lot of the songs kind of go over into regular life, but it does kind of have like a bit of a theme. And basically, you can find most of my memes and jokes and stuff on my Instagram. I've got at Ben Cardilli. I'm on Facebook at Ben Cardilli Laughs, and I'm on YouTube with my music videos at Ben M Cardilli. I don't know why it added the M. Maybe it was just I signed up wrong, but I got to change that soon. Basically, I feel bad not being like a sports guy. You guys have such a cool podcast. Me, I follow hockey a little bit, but I probably one of the less popular teams to Montreal listeners, so I don't want to even mention it. And then also, I was like a bench warmer in basketball when I was young. So,
yeah, no, I mean, look, we all had a love of sports. Eagle and I have been working for a flag football league for years, where we do the podcast for that league. We have some guys that are sort of rotational cast of characters that, do stuff like play-by-play and so on and so forth. But believe it or not, you're not the first comedian we have on. We had a bet with Keem Hoy Charles, with
He was a good
regards
friend of
to
mine.
whether or not he would compete his No Nut May. And for thoughts on that, you can definitely follow Terry Tam's interview. Check it out on hotsaucesports.ca. Again, we love talking comedians because we know how much work it is. Uh, let's get into the quarantine before we get into the process. Though, my experience has been that my wife is tired of me delivering content to her. It's not a conversation with her; it's more of a conversation to her.
Yeah.
And just little things having to do with inflection and changing words and changing vocabulary. So she's heard the same joke 16 or 17 times.
Exactly.
I don't know about you, Ben, but the way I am is I can't use that right away because or else it feels forced. So what happens is I sort of let it sit for 2 or 3 weeks until I forget that I wrote that joke, and then it comes up.
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 weeks later.
Oh, my wife is absolutely useless at trying jokes out on. Like, I think we have like such a different sense of humor that it's like if she laughs at something, I usually scrap it. it's like a rule of thumb. I'll be like, that's not gonna work. You know, like clearly something's not right. But you know, we get along on every other major totem.
Yeah.
But it's good. You know, it's good to not. I have to bring it to the stage. You know, there's no false because you bring your jokes to people sometimes, and everyone has a different perspective, and everyone's coming at a different angle. And like one person will laugh and get a lot of confidence and go do it live. It bombs. You know, you got to sometimes just. That's why I loved. I was hosting a weekly open mic. That's what I missed the most. You know, I was hosting an open mic at McKibben's Irish Pub, and that was like the best practice because it's not only is it a brutal room, but you get to try out like an hour of new material every week if you want, you know, being the host, going up between everybody and just like, oh, time for me to do a joke. You know, it was nice. It was really helped with that whole process. But yeah, quarantine, like, I don't know, it feels like I have been writing a lot of jokes. They have been like showing up. Now I just post funny thoughts on Facebook, you know, if they get, depending on what kind of traction they get. But I find that like, even then, a lot of things that will work really well on Facebook and people respond to won't work live. You know, it depends on how you frame it. So it's keeping the muscle going, but it's not.
I had to learn it the hard way, Ben. Where Eagle, like we can hear you. Oh well, that would have been awesome. Tell us in advance, jerk.
The voice of God. It's just like, you're all full of shit.
So I learned that quickly, Ben, where essentially before I was into doing podcasts, I was a writer, and well, obviously you know me from my days of playing music as well, but you know, I transitioned into writing, and then writing for the Flag Football League, and then doing stuff like play-by-play, and then podcast. And I realized very quickly that the type of material that works on the page, where you can have circular references and you can build a joke slowly over time. The pacing is completely different when you need to deliver it either to an audience or, in our case, to a camera.
Are you doing stand-up?
I am not.
Okay.
So a lot of what we do is conversational. It's sort of a structured improv to a degree, which is, I learned through this process, is incredibly difficult. Stand-up, I've always found terrifying. I've actually started working some material in case I'd like to do it. But Terry, my co-host, he's actually done it, and he started at an open mic, which he thought was going to be easy because, it's a bunch of comedians at an open mic, right? So like they'll get it. But the problem is that comedians tend to know the punchlines to the jokes
before they show up.
Big laughs. You don't get the big. They'll come up to you after and be like, "Oh, that was cool. That was funny. I like the way you did that."
Yeah.
We all know where the joke's going when it's the second you started. So it's a tougher room than people give it credit for.
Yeah. I think my best crowd is still my large family, you know. Whenever there's like a big family dinner, we do those pretty often for people's birthdays. I'll usually do like a tight 10 or 15 between the main course and dessert, you know, just at the table, just slaying. That's what you gotta do, you know. It's a really nice pump up feeling. It like it's way better than an open mic.
Everyone's drinking, everyone's loose at the table.
Yeah, by that time you gotta know when to drop it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when it comes to the creation of jokes and writing of jokes, what is it, the thing that you do? Does it sort of just come to you and then you write it down? Do you have a concerted effort? You go back and rework material? What's the process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I found it was interesting because I'd been writing songs for so long, and when I started writing jokes, there was like a slight shift in the process, but it's pretty similar. You know, you come up with you have this premise. You know, what you're really changing around, you know, like you would keys of a song, right? Is a lot of it is just context, right? You have a funny premise, okay, and then you got to wrap it with something that the context is gonna make it relatable to the audience, right? It's like, did it happen to me? Did it happen to this person? And usually I actually do like truthful, this happened material and just spin it and try to tell it in a funny way where there's a lot of misdirection. And then, you know, you catch the audience leading one way and you kind of bring them somewhere else. But I find that like sometimes to make it really land with the audience, you sometimes have to switch around the players in the joke, you know, switch it around to be more like they can see themselves in there a little bit. So you know, you'll come up with an idea, you'll write it out the way that it came to you, but like with good wording and everything, and you'll try not to memorize it so much as just get the pacing of it. Try it out live, and then see like what parts of it works, you know, and what parts of it don't work. You gotta meddle with the context a little bit, meddle with where it is in the joke. You know, you come back to it and chip away at it. So that was the big change. It's like with a song, you write it, you work on it for a while, you change it till you love it, and then you play it live, and usually people are just like, "Oh, nice," you know. And then with a joke, you write it, you practice a little, you go perform it live, and then you know, you'll get a lot of this, like, "Oh, that's funny." Then didn't like that part, and okay, that's good again. You know, like it's very honest. It's amazing. Like that's actually one of the main things. I actually almost started saying this on stage is the difference between music and comedy is the responses you get. Like I'd invite a bunch of friends. Like you remember when you were playing in a band, you'd invite all your friends out to a show, right? You'd sell them to tickets, and you were super confident because you thought, no matter what, even if the sound guy sucks, even if I screw up a couple notes, whatever here and there, they generally don't know. And even if they do know, like they're still gonna clap at the end because it's all subjective. And at the end, they're gonna come give you a high five and be like, "Hey man, I'll see you at the next one. This was great," you know.
And
With
like
comedy,
it's a party with your friends, right? Like it's you know it's a way, it's an excuse for you to get out with your friends and have some
exactly. No matter what, they enjoy being there for the beers. But with comedy, if you're not doing well, you know it, they know it, and there's nothing to say after. They come up to you, they're like, "All right, I'll see ya," you know.
I won't ever see
and
you
they'll
again.
unfriend you because the experience was way more uncomfortable for them than it was for you. It's like you're used to bombing at a certain point, and then with them, it's like they're like, "I think he might kill himself tonight. Like this is intense. Like that was really sad to watch, you know." So I really try to only invite friends out when I know it's going to be like the kind of crowd that responds to me. You know, like this is going to be good.
For sure. I I wanted to ask, how often does this happen to you? Where it's like, "Hey Ben, what are you doing?" Like, "Well, actually, I do comedy," and how often is the next question? Okay, make me laugh or tell me a joke.
Yeah.
Like
I
so.
got once. I got once. Someone that said, he said, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I was like, "I do comedy." And they're like, "No, no, no. What do you do for fun?" And I was like, "Oh, that's not fun." Okay, good to know. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, no, yeah. It's usually people are like, "Oh, tell me a joke," and it's like, well, it's not like knock knock jokes. The thing is, lately, since I've been like, you know, tweeting and putting out like little comments here and there on online, like I have been working with a lot of short form jokes and sometimes I can just pull out in that context, you know. But like it's not, it sucks though. It puts you on the spot because like generally your best bits are are stories, you know. It's just,
Yeah.
and stories, they only work, it doesn't work one on one as well as it does in a dark room where, you know, everybody is kind of a little tipsy, they're all ready to dig into the part of themselves that they came to see represented, right? And you know, even like the lighting will change everything, right? You perform comedy in a bright room, it sucks. It's like your dad's watching. It's
Well, that's
horrible.
the thing is because and podcasting is easy to get that where we have an intimate relationship with our listeners because
Yeah.
it is we're a lot of times we're in your headset, we're in your ears. Comedy, what's interesting, stand-up comedy is you're developing an intimate relationship while in a room with 50, 60, 100, 200, whatever many people are there, but each of those people have an intimate relationship with you. It's the strangest orgy you've ever been to.
And it's arguably more difficult for up and comers and for beginners. There's a barrier you got to break through, because it's more difficult than it is for like professionals, right? Because when they walk into a room and people know who they are, they're trusted immediately. It's like, this guy's gonna make it, even if he goes a little off the rails and says something a little controversial, or something is just a little flat as a concept, they'll still follow him down that path. Yeah. And be like, this is going to have a payoff, and they've paid the ticket and they want to be there. So just like music, they're going to laugh. They're just excited to be there. I'm not saying that, like, professional comics are amazing and they've been doing it for years and years. And obviously there's a reason that they have these Netflix specials, but like sometimes, as an amateur comic, you'll hear a joke on a Netflix special and say like, that would have bombed at an open mic.
Yeah. If I would have tried that. I don't know if as that guy, but if I'd have tried that wouldn't have worked.
That's why it's hard to like really break into controversial subjects as a starting comedian. You'll have some great ideas and like ways to approach really interesting topics, but it's a little tough because you get a little too political, you get a little too preachy, and you lose your likability to the audience because they don't know who you are and they don't know where you're coming from with it. So they don't trust that it's coming from a good place right away. So sometimes you got to like steer yourself clear of just like doing anything that might rattle people and kind of be a little bit Disney for the beginning. It kind of, that's what I felt anyway. That's what I've experienced.
Yeah, and again, the thing that becomes easier with the way we do it is we have we play sort of different characters on the show. And through the prism of sports, we can a lot of times touch on things that are more controversial than if we were just talking about it as a political standpoint.
Because, like context is important.
Yeah, you can then just play it off with like, yeah, I know, but we're just making fun of LeBron James because.
Yeah, and no one's expecting you to be a politician. No one's expecting. The problem is people expect too much of comics, or the point is like, because so many of them are so good that they kind of come off as like prophets. Some of them are so good that they're able to approach a sensitive subject and really bring a room together. Like Dave Chappelle and these guys are amazing.
But I was like literally thinking Chappelle when you said that.
Yeah, he's just like he can do a serious monologue for 10 minutes and then have like the most throwaway killer joke at the end of it, and people are going to follow him down the entire hole. But it's really tough to do that as an amateur comic.
What is the concept that you wrote where you were convinced this is going to be a killer? The room is going to light up when they hear this.
Yeah.
And then like it fell apart. Like, can you take us through what that concept was?
Let's see. I had a joke once. I'm trying to remember how it goes because I totally ditched it. I have like a bunch of jokes that like I'm convinced will be good.
Yeah.
And it happens that sometimes like, you'll write something and a couple months later you find the perfect way to introduce it and suddenly it works, right? Just like a song, I noticed that used to happen with me all the time where I'd write like an entire song where there's missing something, finally get the perfect bridge, and then you're just like, okay, you're running it. Yeah. I had this one joke that I was really excited about because the first 3 times I did it, like it really did well, and then never again. I think it was just a little bit cringe. I had this joke where, let's see if I can remember how it goes. Basically I was saying like, oh, Canadians, everybody thinks Canadians are like, such like advanced thinkers and progressive and we don't really kind of step out of line, especially in conversation, all this stuff. But it's like, it's kind of weird because one drink we have over here, I was working at a bar at the time and I was like, one drink we have over here is the Irish car bomb, right? It's like, isn't that kind of a little nuts that we have a drink that literally celebrates like the political unrest of another country that isn't ours? It's like I had like I had an Irish woman. See, I'm messing up the joke already. But basically, it's like, it's a true story. It's based on a true story because I had this Irish woman when I was working at, I didn't really know the context of I didn't know about the troubles in Ireland. It's almost like, think about it. Like it's almost like you have, it's almost like as if we were going to take a 2 like, flaming shots, drop them into a Manhattan and call it a 9/11. Like it's fucked up, just to have that kind of, and I had this Irish woman come into the bar and she ordered she asked me like, oh, do you have any fun shots I might try? And I was like, well, being the idiot I was, I didn't know the history of it at the time, and I was just like, well, yeah, we got the Irish car bomb, and she was like, what? Because they don't have that over there. It's like, it's like you just you take a shot of Jameson, drop it into a Guinness, and makes a kablow, and you chug it down. And she was like, did you call it that because of the troubles? And I was like, yeah, a couple of these gets you in lots of troubles. Like I didn't know what the context was.
You talk about the unrest in Ireland and where that comes from. I know that last time I had Irish car bombs, I caused some unrest in the back seat of a taxi. It's been so long that it's not Uber. It was absolutely a taxi.
When we used to go drinking, we had to pay the round essentially. So everyone would do it. Whoever finished it last paid the whole round for everyone. So experienced a lot of trauma because of the Irish.
That's funny. It's crazy because when I noticed I was doing it at the open mic, right? And I do the open mic at an Irish pub, and a lot of the time there's Irish people in the audience, and I always found like the Irish people in the audience. First of all, I butchered the joke. I used to have pacing to it and stuff, but because I've totally given up on it. But I used to have like Irish. Whenever I had Irish people in the audience, they would love the joke because that was always their first question, like, "How the fuck do you guys get off?" Making this drink on our behalf. Like we don't have that back home, so they would always like relate immediately. Like, yeah, we always find it uncomfortable when we came here that would be happening. Mind you, like I'd always lose the rest of the room when I made my 9/11 reference, because we'd always have like American tourists in too, and they'd always be like,
no. Doesn't matter when it is, still too soon.
It was always like, it always worked only in like rooms of, it would be perfect if it was just Montreal people and a couple Irish people. That was always perfect,
Yeah. That's like,
so
that's the thing too, is the different crowds and how they will react to the specific joke. And like, you're not making a political statement at all on behalf of the NRA or on behalf of the Taliban. No. That joke, but
I'm not taking a stand on it at all. Exactly. That's what I never do. I try to keep all like actual politics out of it. I'm just like noticing dumb things. That's it.
I wrote an article. This is somewhat different, but I wrote an article on our site, hotsaucesports.ca. That was a shameless plug, in case you couldn't tell. But on our website, I wrote an article about why Cam Newton, who's a black quarterback, was not signed yet, and there was not even a mention of race. There wasn't the Colin Kaepernick. Yeah. It was legitimate. Like, these are football reasons why he should be signed, and this is why, according to the football calendar, it's just coming at an awkward time. Plus, the injury factor and COVID means he can't be tested by doctors. Right. It was the most straightforward. I thought it was going to be like, okay, this is just filler. If someone else is going to have a more interesting article this week, it'll be fine. And we got so many hits. And then one guy in the comments wrote, "Let me guess, the writer of this article was black." And I'm just like, wow. I mean, my picture is right there. When you I don't know.
I chose the wrong filter.
it was just strange. For some reason, that's how that joke was received by this one gentleman in Kentucky. But
that's funny. And the gentleman was like a white gentleman, or
he was not a gentleman in any way. You could tell the guy, when going to weddings, only wears his formal hoodies.
Okay, his formal hoodies and his t-shirt tuxedos. Yeah,
exactly the clientele.
And his dark navy Crocs.
Ben, have you so I know you've been doing the music stuff, and I've seen some of the ones you've linked, but have you done any sort of stand up through Instagram Live or any of that?
Yeah, so not stand up per se, but every Sunday night on my Instagram, I run because I was producing not only the open mic I was doing, but I was also producing a show out of McKibben's Irish Pub on Bishop called Comedy Confessional with a friend of mine, Michelle Dominique. We were kind of co-producing it. And it was a monthly show, and we usually had like some really great acts on from Montreal, people who do JFL and all kinds of festivals around the city. And so we had a lot of fun producing that. We'd take turns hosting it. And then when we went into quarantine, I decided to take the concept. So it's called Comedy Confessional. And before, it was just kind of comedians would come up. Sometimes we'd bring them up to a confession of theirs, and then they'd have to riff on it for a bit and then do their act, right? But I've taken the concept, and instead of making it stand up, we do basically a 1 hour program every Sunday night, where I get a couple of comics to come out and actually just tell stories that are strictly confessions. Like, this is the shit I did when I was a kid. never really told anybody about this. And then we like riff on it and talk about it. It always ends up being a lot of fun, and it's like really funny. But it's because conventional stand-up does not work online without a crowd, without a room. It's like, this has been the substitute, you know? Also,
the question was how do you find it given that you don't have an audience? But obviously you guys found it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's better with the stories, you know, like as long as you and the other person are having fun.
Yeah.
You can always tell in the comments, people are responding, people are laughing, people are commenting, they're like into it, you know, there's just that it's kind of ends up just being like a live podcast that ends up being like, you know, a lot of fun for people to kind of interact with. But recently, a friend of mine started hosting basically a comedy show at the SAQ in NDG, where we're performing for like the lineup of people on a Friday night who want to get their last minute booze. You know, there's always like 50 people lined up at 5 o'clock to try to get in before 6. So they've been setting up equipment, and we've been talking to the lineup. So did that once, and I'm going to be doing it again this Friday, trying to do a little hosting a little show for patrons who need to get their drink on, you know?
That's the thing with this quarantine is creative people go a little nuts when kept locked up. So we're trying to find all sorts of outlets. I know for us at Hot Sauce, we've been working harder than we've ever been working, just because we don't have the outlet of our usual setup in studio and the way we normally do things. So definitely we've had to find ways. How many of the confessionals have been about masturbation?
You know, not a lot. What we do get a lot is people shitting themselves in weird places.
Oh, okay.
A lot of shit.
Oh yeah,
yourself
I've done that.
Yeah, everyone's just like, that's definitely the worst thing I've done. So they all have like a shit yourself story. I think I had one early on too. You know, just it's all been like kind of like people really are revealing with their stuff, you know, so that's been really fun. People really come prepared with like all right, and it's great because a lot of it's like really believable. You can tell this is a traumatic experience for them, and they're bringing it up, and it makes it like a lot of fun, you know, when someone brings something super truthful to the table.
Yeah, I was on a date with a girl once. I was downtown, so we were taking the metro. It was like going out to the bar, restaurant, wherever it was.
Right.
And I you know, when you got some gas loaded and you're gonna let it go silently, and the metro's loud anyway. So
especially when you're stressed, yeah.
And it just sort of slipped, and then I was like, I don't know what to do. This is an issue. So what happened was, we got to the next stop. The doors opened. Right before the doors closed, I just stepped out of the metro, and then
you just ditched her like on a public transit.
And like, this is pre-social media. Like, there's not an easy way to track me down at that point if I don't answer your 3 phone calls, and then you just give up on me. Like, texting wasn't a big thing at the time, and there wasn't any social media to find me. So yeah, but for all I know, that this woman has a voodoo doll, and that's why I'm dealing with all these aches and pains as I'm getting older.
Yeah,
gray. Yeah,
she gave you IBS. She's like, you know, I think you missed a great opportunity to be able to make her feel like shit about it. To just get to the dinner and she's just like noticing, like, what's that off smell? It's like, are you giving me some fecal discrimination here? Like, this is a known.
How dare you?
You gotta excuse me, miss, but this is my truth, and I'm sitting in my truth right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I can imagine those confessionals being really fun. Without
you should come on sometime, man. Honestly,
I mean,
I'm sure you tell your story. You know.
Yeah.
Really soup it up, open it up.
Our show is largely confessional anyway. But yeah, no, for sure. I'd love to, because I was born without shame. It's a strange thing. Like, there's not
as most of like the geniuses of our time have been, right?
Eagle, I am a genius. I've been telling you.
You gotta. Shame is the one thing that keeps us all down. You know.
The only reason you have shame is to keep your ego in check. No, keep it that way.
Exactly.
Eagle had to drive me to my first interview with the Flag Football League, and it was the day after my 30th birthday that he was at, and then he had to drive me to this meeting, and I was completely hungover. And Eagle's like, dude, did you throw up on yourself? You smell like vomit. I was like, no, I don't know whose vomit this is, but I've taken 2 showers and then we'll come off.
It was really bad. It was really bad.
No, I just put on a little eau de l'estomac
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. So definitely, Eagles, through our friendship, has indicated times where I should have been more shameful, but instead, I just.
Hey, you got the job, right?
I did. I think
I had to vouch hard for that, man. That was not an easy sell.
Yeah. You were handing out nose clips for everybody, just like, this is just a precautionary measure.
And it was a breakfast interview too, right? So we went to the guy's house. He's making like scrambled eggs, and it's just Peeze sitting at the table trying to like hold his head up wearing sunglasses, shoveling these eggs into his mouth as quickly as he can so he doesn't vomit them back up.
Meanwhile, the two of you are still scrambled from the night before, so that's perfect.
Yeah, honestly, it was Eagle in that situation, like every other situation since, has gotten me everything I have. So basically, I definitely owe him that debt of gratitude.
How many times when Alex shows up to things do you say the eagle has landed? Is that like your?
It has become a thing. Yes.
Yeah.
The weird part is, I have another group of friends where his nickname is Dracula.
Okay.
And the only way I could get my car to be able to call him with my voice command was calling him Dr. Acula. So Dr. Acula, he's been Dracula, he's been Eagle. When people call him Alex, it's very disorienting for
him. Dr. Acula. That's awesome. Yeah. One Chris coming to count. I just think whenever I think Dracula, I think the cat from Sesame Street. You know?
Absolutely. He is the most terrifying vampire of any sort ever made.
Yeah.
Ben, thanks for joining us. Where again can people find you, and when is your album coming out, and what is it called again? Just
so it's called the Great Indoors, and I'm just finishing up the masters right now. I'm kind of obsessive about little details and just tweaking. I got an album cover I got to shoot, which is all planned out, and should be within the month, I think. As soon as I can get it on iTunes. It takes a couple of weeks to process, and then I'll make a little ad campaign and remind people. But if people want to follow, just follow me on Instagram at Ben Cardilli, Facebook Ben Cardilli Laughs, YouTube Ben M Cardilli. And I'm also on Twitter at Ben Cardilli. Also, I don't really touch Twitter that much, though.
For sure. It's been a good time. Definitely do follow Ben. We like interesting people. We like creative people. We like to keep them in our inner circle. So definitely, please support the people that we support, because that's what makes our community stronger. Thank you again, Ben, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to talk to you soon. Hopefully, we'll talk to you after the album comes out. We'll see how the reception is.
Sweet. Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
Great. Thank you all for listening. Eagle, thank you for all the work that you've done. And because we are not in the studio and I don't have any audio input, I don't know how the show ends.